now we have this discussion and question session, but I would ask the audience still to wait a bit, because you know, it was a bit unjust situation maybe here, but because the others could reflect on the first speakers. I would give floor for short comments or insights or critiques, even maybe to or reflections on the other speakers, to all of our speakers. But I would start with Professor Ansuátegui, Roig, so that you were the first and didn't have a chance to respond or reflect.
Well, I will do a very brief reflection, general reflection about the interventions, because the problem of this session was the relationship between technology, democracy, and rights. I think that the different interventions, they have demonstrated that there is a link between technology, democracy, and rights in the terms of risk. Because it's true, if what we have said today, if what we have told today is true, there is a real risk for democracy and for rights and for a determinate conception of law, a concept and justification of law. Does it mean that we don't need to work with technology? No, we need to work with technology, because technology today is part of our reality. But as lawyers, as jurists, as philosophers, we need to keep in a critical position. If we lose this critical position, we will do a critical philosophy, and a critical philosophy, I think, is not useful from the political point of view, for the moral point of view, and for the social point of view. And we, as lawyers, we will lose our DNA, because a lawyer that is not critical is a lawyer too much easy for the power. And at the end, technology is power. And we must remember our responsibility as lawyers, and the responsibility of the discourse that in the academic field we construct, because this discourse is not closed only in the aulas, in the faculties, in the departments. This discourse has political and social derivations, consequences. And if we lose the critical point of view in front the link between technology and power, in front the capacity that technology has to manage our life from the social, from the political, and from the individual point of view, we will do a wrong work, I think.
Thank you for these reflections. Mart, you want to add?
Oh, yeah, well, I might, thank you. Well, I was fascinated by the question if we would use AI or technology for medical purposes. I remembered maybe half a year ago we had a conference here for the anniversary of Tallinn University in presence of Vice Rector. I am embarrassed to say I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was recently. Yes. But we had here a presentation by one of our best Estonian doctors dealing with bones and muscles. I'm not sure about the terminology. And he told about a fascinating story. He said that he had had a patient about a problem that he knew nothing about, or very little about. But he knew that his colleague is working in another hospital specializing on that specific medical field. And he had asked AI to put a diagnosis to that patient. And then he sent this diagnosis by AI to his friend and said, I have a patient, why don't you have a look? And his friend said, how did you know? It's exactly what the problem was later. So AI, I have very big trust in AI. You started with the question, who would use artificial intelligence for medical purposes? Again, in this same room, about 5 or 6 years ago, we had a human rights conference where was speaking Robert Spano, who at that time was the president of European Court of Human Rights. And he started his discussion with a similar question that if you go to the airport, and in the airport are 2 planes, and the price is the same, and the time of flight is the same, and everything else is the same, except that one plane is flown by human pilot and the other plane is flown by AI, and you are told the information that most airplane accidents happen because of human error, not technical error. Still, the majority of people said we would choose a human being as a pilot. So that's fascination. But yes, I think I'm running against the tide because I have very big confidence in the capability of artificial intelligence to do the work that humans sometimes do. I just give one final example. Some of you may have seen a documentary which was produced in United States some years ago titled The Cleaners. It addresses a specific question how in the headquarters of Facebook are sitting thousands of young people, and their job is to look at the screen and decide whether a posting by Facebook user is indecent, should be removed, or whether it should stay there. And it's a very horrible, eye-opening documentary because most of the young people, they burn out in 3 or 4 months because what they see sometimes is really horrible. Well, in that situation, an algorithm would do a much better thing. And algorithm would be able to balance conflicting rights also, I think, in the digital domain. And I think algorithm has something which can speak for its favor because it doesn't have emotions. Humans sometimes have good days, sometimes have bad days. An algorithm never has that. So yes, I have very high confidence there. And I think if we shouldn't look at law as something which prohibits the usage of algorithms. Maybe, of course, there is the situation that in purely judicial decisions, there should be a limit to what extent algorithms can have the discretion to decide. But really, the final words. In Estonia, there will be an experiment in one of our courts in Pärnu County Court. Soon we'll start an experiment where AI will start to decide about small claims. No. It is something which the Minister of Justice has said. Well, anyway, I will stop here. I speak too much. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't only the algorithm, but it was also the power the companies having and then what they bring. But maybe Marjolein, do you want to comment as it was pretty much?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are crossing my mind right now. So I'll start with the last. So my faith in algorithms. When you do like a study behind our fantastic smooth screens, you see that a lot of the burden and labor that goes into it is still human labor. So for instance, training machine learning or large language models basically involves a lot of human labor. It means that, for instance, I think the most well-known example recently was at the start of ChatGPT and OpenAI, the Kenyan workers who were paid less than $1 a day to clean text. So the cleaners, that was that movie came out, or that documentary came out a few years ago, but that still happens behind the screen. To us, it looks very smooth and shiny, but there's people actually working far away to make sure that what we get to see is actually ethical, right? So they have to pour through all these labels, sexual abuse, suicide, all kinds of horrible things, to make sure that the computer program is trained in such a way that we get a pleasant output, right? That we're not confronted with those things. I think that's one thing that's very important to remember. And one concept that's related to it is photomation. So we think it's automated, but it's not really true. It's faux, it's fake, it's done by humans. So we're still in that sort of, I think, in-between space where we're not there yet. We're thinking about a lot of the things that will happen and about how AI will advance, but I also think we should be really careful to fall into the hype and just see what's happening now. And that relates also to my second point, because it's something that wasn't addressed yet, I think. But correct me if I'm wrong, which are the material conditions and circumstances for creating artificial intelligence. So climate footprint, the rare mineral resources that we actually have to deplete in order to create AI systems. So just last week or 2 weeks ago, a paper came out in Cognitive Science and Brain and Cognitive Science. It was done by computer scientists Iris de Rooij and Olivia Guess and so forth. I can list the reference later. And they actually state that we won't resemble anything like human intelligence. Before we do, we will have depleted all our natural resources to actually get the machine, to feed the machine. I mean, artificial intelligence doesn't exist in the cloud. It really requires oil, it requires water, it requires minerals, lithium, all those types of things. Before we get to that point, we've already depleted those. Yeah, and that's something also for legal scholars to really think about. Like, how do we regulate this?
Yeah. Leif.
Some fast reflections. Originally, I thought this panel will be relatively, diverse. The topics were quite far from each other. But now it's, I think, clearly visible these issues of law, democracy, human rights, governance, politics come together here by some key dimensions. So we speak of the relationship of digital and physical realm and human presence in both of these. We speak of having some benefits thanks to AI and digitalization, but also some risks and a need to find balance. So we have quite a multifaceted picture of a major change. Probably already now people who are, let's say, 20 years old look into a time 40 years old as weird, like we maybe look back to 19th century. Most of the elements are there. You understand how people lived, but at the same time, everything is very different from a perspective of a person who has grown up in a period where you have AI. So yes, we have common issues and we have major changes to tackle. Maybe one item more concretely also to Marjolein. What you were talking for me is pretty much commenting about this data democracy. We can improve our lives. I agree with Mart in this, that we can reach many productive results by, giving away our agency and freedom. But now the issue is to what extent we go. And as a political scientist, I would say that these big companies, they have extra power because they get extra benefit from every huge investment and breakthrough into other domains. So we move back to the issues of 1960s and 70s. For example, Mancur Olson, who spoke about the emergence and privileged position of certain very powerful interest groups. And it's really hard to develop a counterpower to this. So this is, I think, some point of further thought, to what extent it is possible at all.
Yeah, thank you for this. But now it's the very, very urgent need to give a word for the questions, comments to the audience, so that so many hands here in front were quick people, so the microphones here. Okay, yes, so, but yeah, let's move fast with the microphones and keep the questions short and sharp.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madis Ernits. Thank you to all. Of course, I really enjoyed the panel. Great, thanks. Just Mart, please allow me to cite the official press release of the Ministry of Justice from 2022. There have been a lot of questions relating to the topic of AI judge. We have to explain that the article about the Estonian project of designing robot judge in Wired from 25th of March 2019 is misleading. There hasn't been that kind of project or even an ambition in Estonian public sector, etc., etc. It's on the homepage of the Ministry of Justice.
Thank you. If you allow me to respond. I'm in a different situation from Madis, I cannot cite, but certain email conversation with the head of the particular court gives us recent different information that there are certain plans to initiate AI judging smaller claims. But I think we shouldn't use this opportunity to debate on Estonian internal matter.
Okay, shall we just pass the mic?
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, I wanted just to sharpen up the question, that provocative question that Marjolein put to us. Let me put it this way. Would you be comfortable with AI that is developed for security purposes and which is not regulated by the AI law, like all sorts of military applications? It is not regulated, it's exempt from the regulation. Would you be comfortable with that AI being applied for health purposes? I think those people who said we would be comfortable about AI being applied for health purposes, even though it was developed for security purposes, might have second thoughts about it, where they know that that AI was not regulated anyway at all. Yeah. And it raises the question of whether our regulatory focus is on the right things. I mean, some people would say we over-regulate, like health. Well, it does matter, but it doesn't matter as much as some of the things that we don't regulate. We have special provisions or exemptions for security, for intelligence, for military purposes, for policing. They are all dealt with kind of in a different way. And that's maybe a cause for uncertainty. But the more general point I make is that from Walzer onwards, we have this picture of different spheres. They have their own kind of integrity, their own principles. They're kind of incommensurable. Okay. And that's continued in privacy thinking in some places too. I hope I don't misrepresent, but...
Yeah, no, it's true. Helen Nissenbaum's work is...
Exactly. Helen Nissenbaum, Daniel Solova, people who I would see as being in that kind of niche. Okay. What worries me here, there are legitimate concerns about these horizontal movements from one sphere to another. The question is, does that properly capture the full picture of our social worlds, where surely some spheres are more important than others, and there's a kind of hierarchy here that we need to introduce? What really would concern me would be if there were movements from of tech from one lower level of sphere, as it were, to a higher tier without our realizing that's good, that sort of thing. Oh.
Interesting.
Do you want to comment back? No?
Well, I think that's a really fantastic suggestion. I thought of it, so I start to worry when, for instance, but this is intuitive probably, right? So it's not theorized, like you're thinking like, okay, someone who is making warfare technology and then all of a sudden goes into humanitarian aid. How does that, I mean, but you're quite right. I think that would require some extra theorizing because Walter doesn't do it. But it would be interesting. I think you're right. I think there must be dimensions in terms of hierarchy that would be very interesting to explore, to theorize there. Yeah, nice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was gentleman.
Eugene, thank you.
Yeah.
Short one. How much personal freedom do you agree to lose in order to feel safer about AI and big tech?
How much is it?
How much personal freedom do you agree to lose, give away to government in order to feel a bit safer about AI and big tech?
That is a very difficult question. I will have to think about that because I have to think about what individual freedom then actually would amount to.
I explain logic behind. Basically, the only thing, as I understand, you can do, you can give more right and ground to government to interfere and control big tech companies, etc. Understand logic?
Yes.
So then I'm asking you, how much personal, it means they will intervene in society more and more. And I'm asking, how much personal freedom? Because it's about you, about everyone.
Okay, I think I would take a relational autonomy perspective there. And I would say something like, well, there is no such thing as one fixed individual freedom, or that's something that the stance I would take, but you can disagree with me, of course. But I would say there's different types of social relationships, and those social relationships should be organized in such a way that they lead or allow me to lead a meaningful life, a good life, an autonomous life, an equal life. That's, of course, very ambitious, but I guess there are social conditions that should make that possible. I don't think that sort of exists out of nowhere. I actually also depend, and this is also a feminist standpoint, of course, for a lot of these things, I depend on a government intervening once in a while to make sure that we have education, that you are allowed in certain positions, that you're actually empowered to become part and participate. So I guess that also, I think, has to do something with, and it will depend on the context and the situation, but I'm not against governments regulating or devising policy in order to make sure that in the end, you can carry out that a certain degree of autonomy in a certain space or a certain relationship, basically. That's something I would say, I think.
Okay, thank you. There were people on my left-hand side, and then back there.
Thank you. I have a question about the risk of this transgression and the risk which was not mentioned in the presentation, that while we are having this 19th century discussion, there are countries like maybe Trump administration, if there's coming back, or maybe Chinese Communist Party, who are doing this in the national level. And their technology level is getting better and better. And then while we are totally behind in terms of this kind of the development of the technology, because we're not using it, but just discussing how to regulate. So what about this risk you mentioned?
Sorry, because you were behind the pillar, it was a bit more difficult to follow you. But
sure.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. So then the risk of not doing this, and then getting behind of the other countries' technological development, the U.S., China, possibly some other countries like Singapore or Israel, and they are using this, and then they are developing this technology. And then if we go to the U.S. or China, and then our data will be not stolen, but taken by them, and then they are getting the database is getting better and better. And then can we also just accept or ignore the risk of the technologically behind?
Thank you. So if I understand it correctly, it's about like, okay, so if we start to regulate, basically, maybe other countries will still, I mean, innovate and go beyond us and still collect data. And so how do we deal with that?
Right, and if you regulate or you don't do it, other people are doing it, and then there is a risk. But it was not mentioned in your presentation at all.
Yeah, true. Okay, thank you. So I always think that you have to think from your own ideals and ambitions. So, I mean, that, of course, there's always, other people can always do other things and run ahead and so on. Look, the utmost ideal, of course, would be that we would do this on a much larger level. But I guess one of the EU's ambitions is to take a sort of leading role in setting the standards, basically. And these are ethical standards and legal standards that we can get behind based on these ideas on democracy and so on. That's very, very fast and crude. But I think that's worth regulating, despite the fact that maybe others will do different things. I think you should always, I mean, aim for your own ideal in that sense. But you're quite right. I think that's something to worry about, that, for instance, Palantir is a US-based company, and it got a foothold in the EU. And so we go back to these questions about under what type of legislation was it actually developed in the first place, and how should we then deal with that when it arrives here and hold it up against our own legislation? That's a very interesting question, of course, I think. And I don't have necessarily the answer to that. Actually, that would be an answer to you. A question to you, sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, this is very practical question. Anybody else wants to very quick respond to this?
I have a response, maybe not a very practical response. The basis of your question is the belief that more regulation means less speedy technical development. That there is this belief that the two spheres, lawyers don't understand IT development, and IT developers, software engineers, I shouldn't say hate, but they don't like lawyers at all because they think they are actually tying their hands. What we are missing is really evidence-based proof that this is the case, that the reason why Europe is behind in technological development is exactly because we want more regulation. And I'm not convinced that we have that evidence. Maybe there are some other reasons. That's a very brief answer.
Okay. Leif, very quick.
Yeah, it has actually been tackled, these different digitalization strategies in the world. For example, Amy Bradford has written about it a couple of years ago. So yes, we have the regulative strategy of China, EU, we have the, let's say, imposing strategy of China, and we have the liberal strategy of the US in governing digitalization. It, to an extent, I think, comes back to the issue of this new despotism. To what extent we will trade our decision-making rights to for a better life.
Okay.
If I can.
Yeah.
In a very, very short way, you are right. If you don't do it anymore, another people will do it. And in this sense, I think in our context, we are in a very special context because we are in Europe, and Europe is a particular experiment of political and juridical integration, but there is world beyond Europe. And in this sense, I think the main responsibility to regulate this problem is the responsibility of the state. Responsibility of the state beyond the particular situation in Europe. And it's the responsibility of the state because it's true, today the role of the state is submitted to a critical critics, because the state is too small to do certain things and too big to do another things. But I think that it's freedom, and if rights are in danger, the state can't look in another place. The state should assume his basic responsibility.
Okay, thank you. We had a question there in the middle, so that the young man, the microphone, just passed by.
All right, thank you. My name is Kasper. I'm a student here in the Tallinn University. And first of all, thank you to all the panelists for your presentations. I presume all the people here are a lot smarter in these issues. But my question is, I would like to know what do the other panelists think about the proposition that Professor Mart Susi made concerning making refusal of using a computer a human right. And in addition, I would like to maybe make an alternative idea that, like Mart Susi said, making a human rights right now is pretty difficult. So maybe if we just make sure or focus on that countries make sure that in all their social spheres there is a chance to do the procedures or assignments non-digitally. Is that enough? Thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, whoever wants to start.
If I have understood, the question is about the right not to use internet. And I think that from the theoretical point of view is a very interesting proposal, because in the bottom is the right to exit. The right to exit. But from the practical point of view, I don't know. I think it's not easy to articulate this right, because it would mean the absolutely isolation of the individual in one context that you don't choose, because the context is the context of our reality. And technology and internet is a basic element of our reality. I can't present you a critical point of view about the dangers of technology on the basis of a certain theory of law and democracy and about rights. But I should recognize that it's difficult to live without technology. And in this sense, from the theoretical point of view, this right not to use internet is very, very interesting, because at the end is the right of exit. But I am very worried by the real consequences of this right.
To have an additional focus, this is, of course, the question also of services and costs. Currently, we are moving faster and faster into an arrangement where all kinds of benefits and support is distributed based on digital solutions. So you don't have physical people in many locations, and you have just some channels of movement of information. It is less expensive. It enables us a higher quality of service in certain spots, but it's digitally based. So this right either needs to be conditional. You can't access some services when you use this right, or it will be immensely expensive because you need to have a parallel structure for these people. So it is a tricky question for the government, definitely, and if instituted, the faster the better, because these costs go up all the time.
Okay, any other comments? Maybe no. Do you have hands up here? If no, for now, maybe yes, here, the mic, the young man with mic.
A painting, young man with mic.
Thank you. I'm thinking about scenarios, future scenarios of digitalization with respect to democracy. So maybe address that. There's one that that has been floated in literature lately that I confess, worry about. If you think that democracy is ruled by and for the people, there are some conceptions of democracy that say, well, you know, what we've got is a system of voting and that sort of thing that consolidates preferences, right? So that it gives us the best chance we have of achieving the results most would prefer. And then think of digitalization, especially precisely targeted digitalization, the kind that can tell just what you want and how much you want it relative to other things. And that's true for you and me and everyone. So now we have a digitalized artificial intelligence form of consolidation. And we could, on that basis, create legislation, policy, and execute it. And the question then is that really a form of democracy? Is that really anything like a form of democracy? Have we scandalized ourselves, scandalized the idea of democracy now by taking what seemed to be the thought behind a certain form of thinking about representative democracy and handing it over to AI? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. This is really a question to the point, and I broadly agree with what you are hinting at. I think there are two aspects to bring out. One is that I think all idea of human politics and governance is based on the idea of imperfection. So to add something that aims at perfection somehow undermines the system as it is. The idea has been humans can make small errors for some time. So you have huge amount of small errors that can be resolved. But now, if you pull everything together and you make errors very seldom, but then they are huge errors. This is, of course, a very different type of arrangement that needs different safeguards. But the other aspect, I think, is also that democracy is necessarily also knowledge democracy. So we expect people to be somehow intelligent and able to participate in democracy. But this human knowledge is also, I think, to an extent different from the knowledge created by digitalization and artificial intelligence. I'm not exactly sure what will be the implications in this domain of knowledge, but it also makes one very hesitant, because the information is formed and consists of very different elements and structure than how human beings make sense of the information.
Okay, anybody else wants to?
I would add here that that's a perfect example of the non-coherence theory, that you have a concept which has been developed for centuries in the physical domain, and then you want to transpose it into the digital domain and the meaning changes. The same word, but the meaning is different. And what it really, another question we can ask is it appropriate for us to assume that the ideas and the concepts which we have developed in the non-digital domain they are actually suitable and effective in the digital domain. Maybe we are artificially trying to paste it there. Like if there is a heart transplant, the body rejects a new heart. Maybe democracy is not a suitable concept for the digital domain. But we are imposing it on it. But it's a challenging thought, so I'm stopping here.
Could I say?
Yeah,
sure. No, in a very short way, yes, democracy needs human knowledge. But before this, democracy needs human being. And human being with all its characteristics. And speaking about human being, the first we found is imperfection. Yes, it's the most natural feature of the human being. And I won't remember that yesterday, Professor Amato told us a question that is very, very interesting. The mistake is human, and the correction of the mistake is human itself. I don't know if digitalization a theory of digitalization can work together with this statement.
Do we have...
If we recall the Lincoln slogan, it's not just rule for the people, it's rule by the people. And what's lost in that version that I was just describing is the people doing the ruling. And what we want is not that everything that we want gets done. We want to be the doers of it, in some respect. And to hand this over to our technology is to pull us out of the place where we would want to do the doing, right? And not have someone else do it for us.
No, see, everybody is nodding. Do we have a question in the virtual, from the virtual participants, not the pods, but the people online? Probably not. We are was there a hand? No? But we're getting to the end. I pointed out the paradox earlier, maybe as a kind of concluding marks, but I drop in the idea that what I hear and think along is that the more we give, coming back to the topic of the conference as such, that giving the decision power to the artificial intelligence or machines, the more we trust in that line to the innovation of technology, the more we restrict the innovation in the spheres we apply it, because this human ability to think out of the box will be lost. What do you feel the same? Or any other thoughts for just 1 minute for everybody on the panel for the concluding remarks?
I think basically you're also right. If you speak of innovation as human-based phenomenon, because most likely AI produces innovation of a slightly different kind. So you could easily innovate and win out in very clearly defined specific tasks or fields. But the question is, can you keep it in check? And the question is, to what extent to go with that? If you don't pay attention to checks and controls, it will easily spiral out of any control opportunities.
Yeah, maybe also still something about the humanness versus the machine. Yesterday we talked about that basically the types of machine learning that we have right now, or the AI that we have right now, is based on prediction modeling, right? So it's not about reason giving. It's about the most likely combinations of language together, the most likely predictions given a certain data set, and so on. So you recycle everything that's already there. There is nothing new in there, it's recycling what's there to create something new, which is likely to please you in a way. And so one of the things I worry about maybe from the outside, and maybe we haven't discussed it really yet in law. So one of the things, of course, that makes us human is that we are every day confronted with our finiteness. We're going to die, we get ill, we see each other being vulnerable, we witness each other going through all kinds of suffering, and as human beings, and also all the fun, the good stuff. But machines can never, ever, ever have a sort of basic sense of what that actually means, what that is. And it seems to me that if democracy is about doing, it's not only about preferences or reducing everything to a sort of marketplace of ideas. It's about embodied experiences, about living together and doing things together. The same goes for the law. In a way, we always treat law as something, or maybe from the outside, as something fixed, but it's sensitive to these types of things, right? We try to incorporate that. I think that's really important to keep in mind. Yeah.
From my side, I would end with a paradox about judges and legal norms. I analyze in my book the question, why do we trust human judges more than we would trust AI judges? It is because we trust human judges because the judges in turn sometimes may not trust law. They may find that law is mistaken, they may raise the questions about constitutionality of law, so they distrust positive law. An AI judge doesn't distrust positive law. Artificial intelligence judge is the best positivist you could find. And that's why we should trust human judges more than AI judges.
I only want to say that I think we can't avoid the power of technology, but we must control them with human rules and with democratic rules. And we as lawyers, we have a great responsibility from the political point of view, from the social point of view, and from the moral point of view.
Oh yeah, these are very baseline thoughts here, so that, yeah, I think what sounds through is that the equal rights, equal treatment is not absolute, and it's always relative given the context and different context here, and then all these has to be taken into account when we incorporate more and more of technology into our lives, which we can't escape as we have learned here. So that thank you very much for participating. It's not by the minute, but by the second we are on time. So yeah, enjoy the lunch, and hopefully everybody will be back for the final session.